This is another Thoughts from the Basement, so I guess we get extras this weekend or something. These are going to come, I don't know, randomly, I suppose, as I have different thoughts. So sometimes you might go for a couple of weeks without seeing one, and other times you might get a couple at a shot. This one is going to be, why don't they just learn English? And I am not going to answer that question. I'm just going to take a look at the question and consider how and why we ask it. So, first of all, I want to say that they in English can be an issue for a word because we don't know who they is unless we're in a particular situation. We can use it in general when we're referring to a particular group of people, like in Spanish, in Peru they speak Spanish. And then we use it to indicate a large group of people. We know who they is because we're talking about the people of Peru, but we also know that it's general, and so if there are some who don't speak Spanish, we're not surprised, but they refers to that large group then. Or in Latin America, they eat supper later than we do in the States, and so we understand that they is a large group of people, and it may not be everybody, but it's a lot of them, maybe, or most of them. So the first question then that comes to mind, if we examine the question, why don't they just speak English, is who are they? And do we mean to say, as we do in the previous examples, that most or many immigrants in this case aren't learning? I said Spanish earlier, didn't I? I meant English. That many or most immigrants coming to the States don't learn English. If that's the case, then we're making too broad a generalization without really looking at the facts and at the numbers and statistics. Not that I'm going to argue numbers or statistics as far as who does and who doesn't, but it's always dangerous to make a large statement about a large group of people without checking things out first. So the first thing with why don't they just learn English is, what do we really mean by they? Who are we talking about? The second thing to note with they is, if it's in a specific situation, we can better answer the question. So if that question is coming from you're at Walmart and two people are talking Hindi to each other as you're going through the toy section or whatever, then and you say, why don't they just learn English? We know you're talking about those two people who are speaking Hindi to each other. So now at least we can address those two people. Why don't those two people learn to speak English? And the next thing to consider then is, just because you hear somebody who's not speaking English doesn't mean they don't speak it. Sometimes we assume that if we hear two people speaking a different language than English together, they don't speak English, but that's not necessarily the case. It's not a logical conclusion to make. For example, when I was growing up in Peru and my family went into town to go shopping, we spoke English to each other because that's our first language. That's what we did. I spoke English to my dad, spoke English to my mom, maybe a couple Spanish words thrown in here and there. But if Peruvians had heard, and doubtless they did, heard our family speaking English to each other and then said, well, why don't they just learn Spanish? They would have been wrong, because we did speak Spanish. And all they would have had to do is wait until we got our purchases to the front counter or the table, or inquired about pricing and the quality of the goods or whatever, and they would have known we speak Spanish. So just hearing somebody speak a language other than English doesn't necessarily mean they don't speak English. Another difficulty with the question, why don't they just learn English, is the word just. If we take that out, the question is a better question, because just seems to indicate that something is really easy, and learning another language isn't necessarily easy. So those are the couple comments that I have on why don't they just learn English. Number one is, who is they? And let's be careful with assumptions and generalizations. Number two is, just because somebody isn't speaking English doesn't mean they don't speak English or they're not learning it. And number 3 is, let's leave the word just out, because that seems to indicate that learning English is really easy, or at least quite simple. Thirdly, the best way to get an answer to that question is to talk to the people. If you have people that you know that are not learning English, then, well, I guess you can't talk to them if you speak English and they speak and they don't. But to try to find out from people who don't speak English, or you think they don't speak English, why aren't you speaking English? If you have friends, neighbors, employees, and others that you know, then just ask them. Find a way to indicate, or talk to a friend who's bilingual, have someone translate for you, and say, you don't seem to speak English, why is that? And you can get an answer, and then we can deal with it. Thanks a lot. Hasta luego.